So, okay, so we have commenced, and the question is, are there any corrections to the minutes or summary? Okay, hearing none, then I suggest that they be accepted as submitted. Move to the next item. Community Center Advisory Board CCAB appointment recommendations. Who's going to handle that?
Candy, do you want, or is Marty on here? I thought I saw him, but Candy, would you like to give an intro of what this is and what we're asking?
Okay, I don't have that pulled up. We didn't get invites to this meeting, and I forgot to send a link to Marty, so he probably doesn't have that. Our center advisory committee board at the Milwaukee Center had 3 openings, and it did a recruitment and had 3 re-applications, actually, applicants that came in. They've been reviewed by the Center Advisory Board. And I believe, Joel, you're on that committee, correct, and representing?
Yes, yeah, these are folks that we're looking to get reapproved to our board. In fact, I thought I saw Marty maybe in the attendees, but I'm trying to pull up the roster. I didn't have it in front of me. Sorry.
Well, I have it here too.
Yeah, the 3 people are
Sorry.
Julie Donahue.
Sorry
Virginia
about
Sykes,
that, guys. I was in as an pardon me.
There's
I was in as
Marty.
an attendee. I was in as an attendee, and I was in the wrong capacity. So.
Actually, I'd like to introduce Marty Hanley. He is our center supervisor at the Milwaukee Community Center.
Good evening, DAC. Thanks for having me. Sorry about that glitch. My name is Marty Hanley. I am the center supervisor at the Milwaukee Community Center, and I'm also the liaison and staff support for the Milwaukee Community Center board, which is we call the CCAB. And the board has 3-year terms. There's 12 members, and 3 of those members are up for reappointment, and they have filled out the proper application, and they have been recommended unanimously by their fellow CCAB members for reappointment. Their names are Marilyn Schum, Virginia Seitz, and Julie Donahue. So I'm here to ask this group to forward this and to approve this, and then it will go to our board of directors for final approval. And certainly if there's any questions, I'm here to handle those as well.
Don't see any questions. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the nominees for reappointment to the CCAB.
Thank you, Joel. Anyone to second? Jan. Thank you, Jan. Okay, it's moved in second. Do we do a roll call or raise our hands, or
there should be time. There should be time for any discussion amongst the board members.
Okay, good. Any
If
discussion? Hearing none. The question is are we doing roll call votes or hand raises, or how do you want to do that, team? I don't know what we're required to do. I've seen so many variations.
It's your choice if you want to do it by raised hands, or Jessica
Sure.
would certainly call the roll.
Well, it might be easier with this big a screen and this many faces. Jessica, could you call the roll, please?
Sure. Anita?
You're muted, but you said you're still muted.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Ben?
I saw him a while ago.
There he is.
Oh, he's waving. Is that a thumbs up wave?
Yes.
David?
Yes, yes,
Deborah?
Yes.
Desi,
Aye.
Jan,
Yes.
Joel,
Yes.
Luca,
I am here.
Maureen,
Here.
Ryan,
Yes.
and Grover.
Yes. It sounds like it was unanimous. I don't know what the count was, but. Okay,
Thank you.
you bet. Thank you.
We will get that passed up through the right channels, whoever's going to be doing that to get it to the board.
Okay. So the next item is our discussion agenda. And one of the things that we talked about before today, since my experience with our CPO is having people have access to the chat, worked well there. And I like to think we have a well-behaved audience. We'll find out whether we can continue doing that or not. But so we'd like to use the chat as a place for attendees to communicate as to which agenda items they'll wish to speak to or about during the public comment. So that's just a FYI, and I see one right there. I'm here with some additional thoughts I haven't shared. Okay, good. So they'll have a chance to speak about that at the appropriate time. So the first item, I'd like to suggest that I talked to Mike earlier about doing a minor change up in the order. Rather than launching into what the DAC members' roles are, we thought it would be better to first hear what the responses to the questions were, so we'd have a better scope for those who are not very familiar with what all the parts and moving parts are. So without any objection, I'd like to have Mike let us know who's going to be saying that.
I think I'll probably be fielding most of the questions, although I'll defer to others if need be. We sent the responses out to the DAC members yesterday, so hopefully you've had a chance to review those. I guess the easiest way is does anybody have specific questions about any of the particular answers? Otherwise, I can just kind of run through and summarize the written response.
I do see that I actually jumped the gun, and I don't want to usurp the time of the program introduction, and I apologize for that. So can we hold that, Mike, and then do that immediately
You bet.
following? Okay, good. So the same explanation comes, but it's later. So it's time for the program introduction.
And I'd like to introduce Candy, who is going to facilitate the discussion, but we've got several NCPRD staff members here to present to you an overview, kind of a high level description of our recreation function. So with that, I'll turn it over to Candy.
thank you. It's great to see everybody here tonight. I'd like to introduce you to our recreation division tonight. And as Mike mentioned, we have some staff members here I'd like you to meet. I would like each staff member to share their title and how long they've worked with the district. And I'd like to start with Tina Johnson.
Thank you so much for having me here. I've been with the district for 23 years and I am a recreation coordinator.
Jason Kemrick.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Kemrick. I'm your aquatic and recreation supervisor, and I've been with the team for 27 years now.
Joe Loomis.
Hello, everyone. Joe Loomis, as Candy mentioned, sports supervisor for the district, and I've been with the district for 16 years.
And now I'm going to see if I can try and share my screen here. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
The Recreation Division consists of the Aquatics, Enrichment, and Program Activities and Sports. The purpose of the Recreation Division of NCPRD is to serve, I apologize on that, is to enrich community vitality and promote healthy living through parks and recreation by providing a variety of recreational and educational opportunities for all of our residents. While the past year and a half has been a challenge for programming and operations, our residents have appreciated what we have offered. We have transitioned to online registration for all programs and activities, and that has allowed us to streamline our program surveys. This past year, we exceeded our 96% satisfaction rate on surveys and received many compliments about our programming. These surveys provide valuable input on current and future programming interests of our patrons. Today's presentation is an overview of recreation, and the majority of our statistics shared will be pre-pandemic from fiscal year 18-19. We are eager to resume our pre-pandemic programming with new cultural programming, in-person community events, programs, and activities. Let's get started with aquatics. Jason, please take over the presentation.
Hello again. North Clackamas Aquatic Park is a regional provider of our aquatic safety, fun, and fitness. This 86-degree pool environment serves up 400,000 gallons of diverse programming for our local community as the only public pool within the district. To share some information about our staffing, NCPRD prides itself on being efficient and excellent stewards of our tax funding. One great example is the aquatic park staff of 3 full-time and 2 regular part-time dedicated employees. The majority of the staff are part-time temporary employees. These employees are often first-time workers, 15 years of age and up. One of the wonderful byproducts of our NCPRD trainings is mentoring these young workers into our future doctors, lawyers, teachers, and members of the military armed services. This year was especially unique in that we certified over 80 community and staff members following lack of pool operations during the state shutdowns. The employee scarcity has been no stranger to the aquatic park during this pandemic. Typically, we employ 80 to 120 part-time employees. One significant shift that we have embraced is free lifeguard classes in an attempt to foster more staff members. On to our swim lessons. Our swim program strives to serve our local community as a training center for all ages. We typically teach over 5,000 participants per year. This last summer, we shifted our swim lesson program to a 1-week program to accommodate 50% more participants. We served over 800 participants in our 1.5 months of summer operation. That being said, we were not successful in serving the nearly 500 waitlisted participants, most of which were from outside of the district. An exciting program this summer was the partnership with North Clackamas School District, funded by the Summer Learning Grant. We provided free water safety, fitness, and fun classes throughout the summer. This served over 1,500 school district students of North Clackamas, including many students that utilize Spanish as their primary spoken language. Now to let you know a little bit about our recreation side, which is our big surfs. Our recreation swims feature Oregon's largest wave pool. This program is the main revenue generator of the aquatic park, and in normal operations has between 300 and 1,000 swimmers each swim. Currently, we are capping the swims at 200 swimmers to ensure safe spacing for our swimmers, as they are not wearing masks during their swims. Swim teams are an integral part of our site in that we host 11 total swim teams. This includes all their home meets and practices. The result is over 31,000 visits by these swimmers during their respective swim season. Lastly, I just want to bring up some of our other aquatic programs which we feature, which include our health and fitness oriented aquatic programming. These visitors include many of our seniors, preschool age residents. The opportunities presented involve a lot of flexibility by being offered often 7 days a week for patrons in a drop-in format. And now I'd like to introduce Tina to discuss enrichment.
Thank you, Jason. Adult programming held at the Milwaukee Community Center provides fitness, social interactions, and learning opportunities for our residents 18 years and older. A partnership with Clackamas Community College Community education provides instructors to help keep our fees low and provide discounts to those over 62 years of age. We typically have over 12,700 participants per year pre-pandemic. Also popular are activity and interest groups, which are drop-in programs that are led by volunteers. Before the pandemic, annual participation was over 8,800. Once the pandemic hit, staff quickly adapted to create 2 Zoom studios, train operators and instructors on the Zoom platform, and rolled out workshops and classes for our residents. During the past year, virtual programming provided a connection for people from their homes to join in socially and stay active. With over 2,000 participants overall, we offered 23 unique sport programs, including hoopers, basketball skills and drills, speed, agility, and quickness, and inclusion, bingo, boogie, to name a few. 46 adult virtual classes were also offered and included aerobics, intro to Zoom, Spanish, writing, yoga, and Zumba. Staff and volunteers were able to pivot from traditional in-person events to virtual with winter celebrations, virtual visit with Santa, parks for pollinators, and the golden anniversary. Pictured is the Hoopers basketball skills and drills and virtual visit with Santa. Our youth programming is offered in partnership with local providers and contractors. Archery and horseback are offered off-site, while dance classes, gardening, and science classes are held at the Milwaukee Community Center. Pictured is the Hawaiian Hula Days camp. The free summer rec mobile program travels to neighborhood parks. Staff provide children with activities, crafts, and games for 2 hours of fun. We have partnered with North Clackamas School District at free lunch sites and typically make 70 park visits each year, as well as attend events in the community. This program's attendance increased 20% during the summer of 2019. Movies in the park are popular with over 2,000 participants each year. This past year, we offered drive-in movies, which drew 104 vehicles and over 300 participants. Summer 2019, we held a series of 3 concerts in the park, bringing bluegrass, swing, and 80s music to the community. We look forward to being able to offer more concerts in the future. New this year, in light of the pandemic, NCPRD Boo Bash drive-through Halloween event allowed residents an opportunity to view several lit-up Halloween scenes that came alive with people in costume. Winter Celebrations is an interactive cultural event that brings music, crafts, games, dance, and food to the community. Families can explore the meaning and traditions of Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and Christmas. Over 30 volunteers engage families in activities to help make this a memorable event. The My Little Valentine Dance is a Valentine-themed evening of DJ-provided music, desserts, and games for families. This event is offered yearly and takes place at the Milwaukee Community Center. Parks for Pollinators help educate the importance of pollinators to our ecosystem. Each registrant picked up a goodie bag filled with activities as he tuned into the virtual piece with a master gardener the next day. The Golden Anniversary celebrates couples who have been together for 50 years or longer through renewing of vows, music, and food. This event went virtual by broadcasting it on cable TV and YouTube, and the Meals on Wheels volunteers delivered freshly made lunches. Now on to Joe for sports.
Thank you, Tina. We offer a variety of youth sports programs year-round for ages 3 through high school. Our programs include seasonal sports leagues and instructor-led programs such as our pre-kindergarten program, where parents and children participate together to learn a sport. Our programs utilize 16 North Clackamas School District facilities in addition to our own. Our sports programs are fun and rewarding for the participants, the families, as well as our staff. While this is a huge undertaking, it's successful with the commitment of 365 volunteers that contributed over 6,400 volunteer hours, along with our 30+ part-time staff and 2 full-time staff sports coordinators, Johnny Glenn and Josh Brandel. We also offer adult sports programming. Our adult softball leagues resumed play in April of 2021 after being canceled abruptly on March 12, 2020, due to COVID-19. We were able to run 3 leagues this year with 74 teams and over 1,200 participants. Needless to say, teams were very excited to get back on the fields and play softball again. Our gym and volleyball, our open gym volleyball and basketball programs are still on hold due to the pandemic. Hopefully we can get these programs back up and running soon. We continue to explore new adult sports and program ideas for our residents, such as cornhole, pickleball, volleyball, and basketball leagues. In addition to youth and adult sports programs, we offer a wide variety of popular summer camps. This year, our summer camps exploded to 1,300 happy campers from 161 in 2020. In addition to our own scheduled NCPRD camps, we were presented with the opportunity to partner with the school district to offer free camps this summer to our community. We enthusiastically said yes to this idea. The proposal came a few weeks before summer camp season was to begin. I have to say our staff was truly amazing, pulling together curriculum, materials, locations, staffing together for all these camps in just a few short weeks. We were also very fortunate when it came to hiring summer camp staff. We had 10 returning staff, and with their networking, we were able to hire 20 additional team members. In addition to offering great programming, we have some wonderful fields that our community enjoys. Of the 7 park properties listed, only 5 of these locations are available for NCPRD to rent to the public. The Wichita School property is currently home to the North Clackamas School District's Wichita Center. The fields at the Wichita School property are scheduled through the North Clackamas School District's Community Services Department. As of August 16th of this year, Hoodview Park became the Nelson Sports Complex. The fields are now scheduled through the Adrian Nelson High School Athletic Department. The Hoodview Park fields were NCPRD's only year-round artificial turf fields. Now all of our fields are natural grass and available for play mid-March through October, dependent on weather. The school district and NCPRD strategic partnership agreement allows NCPRD free use of school district elementary and middle school facilities and fields, along with the Nelson Sports Complex fields for our programming in exchange for their use of the Wichita School property. This agreement runs through June of 2025. Our fields are greatly appreciated by the community we serve. Even with the loss of the fields at the Nelson Sports Complex for rentals, NCPRD will still serve all the youth organizations listed. The biggest impact was on our adult users. The only adult group we were able to accommodate is the Senior Softball League. They are now playing softball at the North Clackamas Park fields. And from observation, the walking community over at North Clackamas Park really enjoy watching the seniors play. And I have to say, I do too. I think you might like that too. If they got a couple more games left in the fall here. Their next game's this coming Monday, and they play from 10 to 1. Well, that concludes our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was great. Questions?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say a couple times my son's taken swim lessons, and I've emailed Jason directly. And, you know, I've done it. I've emailed folks a ton of times, never expected to get a response. And Jason responded promptly every time. And I was really impressed. I was actually shocked. And I just want to say thank you for all those times you responded to my email.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for a great presentation. That was great. And I actually want to, oh, yes, Joel, sorry. Oh, there are hands up there. I see those little things. Go, Joel.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I'm not sure who this is directed to, but I'm wondering if someone could touch briefly, and if I missed it, I apologize, on the NCPRD scholarship program you guys offer as well for some of this programming. I think that's a pretty cool piece of all of this that should get some mention as well, considering the amount of diversity you guys have in this sort of programming.
We have scholarships available for NCPRD residents, and they are available for anybody that lives within the district that is in need. Typically, it applies to at least one program in each area of our programming. And then the Friends of the Milwaukee Center also provide scholarship opportunities for those over 62 to participate in our programs and activities as well. So there's definitely opportunities to ensure people have options to participate in our program. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Joel. And Anita.
Yeah, on the same vein, I was just thinking how great it is that there are not only free swim lessons with the school district, but also free summer camps. I thought that was really cool.
Excellent. All right, seeing no more questions, let's move to the next piece.
All right, and I'm gonna let staff take off that have other things to do. I know some staff are gonna hang on, but for those of you that can go, thank you so much for your presentation.
While they're still here, I actually do want to thank all of them that participated in the tours that we had. It was excellent getting to spend time with them, hearing their explanations, and it was, I really appreciated that. So thanks to all of you who made that happen.
Thank you all. Have a good night. Have a good meeting.
Okay. Thanks for speaking up for letting the staff go have a life. And I think we already did the segue. So Mike, you want to give
Sure.
us the update on the questions?
Yeah, so the first question was asking about the annual report. As I explained, we created the first annual report back in 2018 as a look back statistical accomplishment document. Unfortunately, a lot of the creation of that look back document is based on needing NCP or financial information from the county finance office. And we have not yet received our audited information. We do know that the audit is due to be completed by the end of November. And there's also a deadline that the audit has to be completed by the end of the fiscal year or the calendar year. As I note in here, the annual report as we've presented it as this look back document is really meant more to be a marketing piece that highlights what it is, our successes from the previous year. Different than the annual financial report, which is the document that's produced after our audit. And so both of those documents will be available once we get the final numbers rolled up. The annual financial report is much more of the well, as it says, finances and what we did in the performance. And our annual report that we've been producing for the marketing, as I mentioned, it's very expensive and time consuming for us to produce. And so this next year, we're looking at presenting it in a more condensed and more visual, web visual format that's going to be much easier for folks to read digitally, and I think provide the same level of information and highlighting our operations. The number two, so the first two questions were specifically asking about 2020-21 annual operations. So basically last year's operations. This one was asking about a 2020-21 report of an annual work plan. And internally, we aren't sure what that work plan is because it's not something that we have produced. So we won't have anything for this 2020-2021. We could produce something for 21-22, which is our current fiscal year, but we would need some idea of what folks would be looking for as far as a work plan. Because as I mentioned in the second sentence, our internal work plan is our budget. When we develop our budget, basically we are budgeting what we are going to be able to do that year, which is our work plan. With that said, there's no reason that we couldn't provide the DAC a summary of kind of the highlights of the budget. So pulling out the actual work items out of the budget is something that we certainly could do. It's just not anything that we've produced in the past. Alternatively, we weren't sure if this was something that was talked about internally with the DAC members themselves of them developing, you all developing an annual work plan, which I've also seen other advisory groups do. If you basically list out a set of priorities for what you want to accomplish. Either one is good with us. We would just, if you want us to produce something, we'd like some direction on what you'd like to see. Question number 3 about the current timeline status of our 2021-22 policy level recommendation options. Again, as I put in our response here, we see this as the regular business that's going to be coming before the board for action items, like the CCAB appointment tonight. The policy level decisions that need to be brought to the board itself, we intend on bringing to you. That's not necessarily everything, not necessarily contracts and other things that would go directly to the board in some respects, but pretty much almost anything else is what we anticipate this third point to be. It's not a one-time list of recommendations, just as business comes up, as we need to get things approved, we'll be bringing those to you in the future. We provided just the overall working draft budget calendar that's being produced, just to give you an idea of all of the steps and touch points in the budget preparation. And as I see it, as it currently is, there's essentially 2 touch points for the DAC. The first you see is scheduled for early February, where you'll be reviewing the requested budgets that each of the divisions has put together. And then again in May, as final numbers have been locked in and before adoption, this would also be brought back before the DAC as well. And then finally asking about the timeline status of our prioritized capital projects. And as you see, there's 2 answers in here. The system plan, which is what we're currently scoping, and I'll provide a little more detail in our project updates. The system plan is what's going to be setting the long-term plan for what needs to be built out, what needs to be improved, replaced, capital replacement, things like that. And then we're going to have a capital improvement plan. Now, each year in the budget, we have capital improvement projects that are listed in the budget that are part of our work plan, as we just discussed. But the annual budget is what sets just for the fiscal year ahead. So we see it really as a couple of different things. As part of the system planning, we're going to be creating this overall 15 to 25 year layout for the whole district. We'll have a capital improvement plan that hopefully looks out at least 2 to out to 10 years. And then, as I mentioned down at the bottom here, either as part of the system planning efforts or done separately concurrently or while we're doing that, we're developing a nominating process for capital future planning. We have great ideas of what needs to be done, but there's not been an effort to engage the community in what capital projects should be considered, how they're chosen and weighted and scored. So we're planning on developing a process, and we'll be letting you all know how that progresses as we get much more into the meat of it. With all that said, we plan on giving you a CIP update in December. So we'll basically pull out our items from our budget right now, which are 9 capital projects, and give you a status update of where all of those are basically up to December. So that's just a quick run through of the questions. If anybody has any questions or comments.
Okay, I'm looking for hands.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to respond.
Okay,
Oh, Deborah's got her hand up.
there we go. Thank you, Deborah.
Hi, I have a question about the master plan. Any idea when that will actually be revised and redone? Because the current thing is very old and never approved.
Yeah, and I will give an update in our current ongoing projects, because that is something that we have money budgeted for, and we are starting the process right now.
So when you say that you have money budgeted for a new version of the master plan, does that mean that you're allocating staff time?
Well, we have money that was set aside in the annual budget to hire contractor work to do the bulk of the planning effort. But with that, we do have staff time that's going to be allocated to, in any master planning effort, there's a lot of data information we have to provide to the consultants. They compile a lot of the information and make the recommendations. But there's nearly every one of my staff people in the admin division and all the division heads will be involved in some level of providing that information to the consultants as we get the process underway. We're at the very beginning stages of scoping the RFP language, our request for proposal language right now, that will turn into the bid document that goes out for consultants to give us quotes.
Well, I guess I'm still maybe fairly dense about this. What consultants, what kind of consultants would you use?
Planning consultants. So in a systems plan, what we're overall arching trying to do is come up with what needs to happen for the division or for the district to remain healthy, viable, and move and forward moving for, again, the next 15 to 20 years, even potentially for a plan. To do that, there's no way that we have the staff internal capacity. And that's really just not something that's done in the industry, because there's a lot of bias if we're giving our opinions of what's done. So we typically hire out that contract to somebody whose specialty is in master plan consulting. And there's dozens of them specific in the parks and recreation realm. There's also local companies that have done specialty work in assisting that. And a lot of it is revolved around market studies, demographic studies, population studies, and community engagement. They're the ones that essentially facilitate and run the public information gathering, the public surveys, all the information that they use to make their recommendations to us and ultimately to you all and to the board.
Okay, well, that's makes it much clearer to me. Will these consultants be providing us with updates as they move along?
The consultants would provide, we would be providing probably more of the updates to you all as the process moves, but you will have a chance to interact and meet with the consultants at several points along the way.
Okay, well, yeah, that's much clearer.
And overall, we estimate an 18 to 24 month process to get this this systems plan is kind of our current estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Anita.
Yeah, I like the sound of this. What did you call it?
Systems plan.
Public nominating process for capital planning in the future. Can you give us any idea of the things that you're looking at for that?
Sure. Really, I'm not reinventing any wheels. We did a really successful capital projects process up in Fairbanks. That was a whole borough-wide led effort. So the mayor led the effort. And really what it looks like is there's a nominating period. We come up with a form, and anybody, any individual, any CPO, any group, any nonprofit, any neighborhood, few people that want to put an idea forward for a capital project, they fill out a form that we often help with, and then there's going to be some scoring criteria to kind of filter through the viability of the project. Is it equitable? Is it, does it have diversity and inclusion methods? Is there green energy or are there savings or more energy, more conservation created because of it. So a lot of different scoring criteria that scores are developed on the nominating form, and ultimately the end result, the output, is a prioritized scored list that helps all of us make the decisions on which capital projects should be placed early based on funding, based on priority. And it just gives us a better tool to feel that we've actually got nominated, we've got projects that others feel are important, not just ones that we feel are important. And so we don't have it fully fleshed out yet, just because that's going to be part of that master planning effort as well, or what we anticipate may be part of that planning effort as well, is to help develop that so that we can make good, well-informed public information-based decisions.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Annika. Ben?
Oh, thank you. Michael, in writing this RFQ for the system plan, I've seen a lot of systems plans throughout the state, and most park districts and cities are required to do it based on state law. Is there anything unique that you all are putting in the RFQ to kind of generate interest in the uniqueness of our district? And that would make this system plan special versus just kind of, running through the course of the project?
We have not in great specificity, other than that needs to be one of the things that we flesh out before we put the RFQ together. But that's something that if there are members of the DAC that have suggestions, Ben, if you've got suggestions on things for us to add in to add or to create that uniqueness, please let us know, because oftentimes we're looking at it at the 5-inch view, not even the 10,000-foot view. And so if you've got things that you think would be beneficial to have in there, either identifying what makes us unique or a unique feature of the plan. One of the things that we're already discussing is how are we going to be engaging the marginalized communities within the district, our Native American tribes, our LGBTQ, our disabled folks, our veterans. How do we engage them to be part of that process and get the information from as many people as we can. And we've got some ideas, but we don't have all the answers. So please, if you've got suggestions, any of you, we would love to hear that.
Okay, is that it, Ben?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ryan.
Well, Michael, you just answered a lot of my questions. So I'm glad to hear the equity piece. And like Ben, I've just finished doing RFPs for a system planning process. I'm always here to help. I don't want to belabor this anymore. And I think we're off track. So are you going to talk about the system plan at another time in more depth?
Yes, at next month's meeting, we hope to have at least the scope identified and where we're at. I mean, once we identify the scope, there's still a requisition process that we have to go through the county. So there's still a bit of process before it would actually get out on the street. So we've got a little bit of lead time to bring some of these, at the very least, the scope, because part of what we're trying to do is make sure we're as comprehensive as we can, but understand that we've got a limited budget. And so what can we get, how much can we get for the most bang for our buck? That ideally, because we've got multiple pieces of this plan that we're wanting figured out, how do we leverage things like data mining so that we're sending the same chunks out to potentially even maybe a couple of contractors, because we're not sure we're going to find a firm that can do all of the recreation and program pieces, but also then work on parks, trails, and natural areas. It may be a couple of different contracts. We're not sure. We'll know that more as we lay out the scoping.
Great. So and I'm kind of leading you on here just a little bit. So it sounds like next month you're gonna really talk about the pre-planning process, and for the DAC members, it's we haven't gone all the way there yet. You guys are doing the pre-planning right now, and that's a really important step. And I commend you and your team for doing a lot of pre-planning work. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up. I did have one question that I wanted to ask, and that had to do with using the number 2 as an example of to evaluate and address the programs and facilities of NCPRD. And the real important part for me is concentrating on, and whether we call it a work plan or wherever that data lives is not important to me, but that it lives somewhere and we can access it, so that we can address the challenges, desires, and needs of all district residents, because that has been in the bylaws for as long as I've been reading the bylaws. And I don't yet know how we as a DAC can fulfill that duty. And I don't know that we'll answer it now. But for me, whatever those words annual work plan means, it addresses how we know what's being delivered to meet those specific challenges, desires, and needs of all district residents. So I don't know there's an answer now, but I wanted to clarify. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Ultimately, one of the things that we've been discussing is this parking lot. And really the parking lot, as we've developed this spreadsheet, which hopefully we'll be sending out to you all within the week, to at least see the structure, is there's 3 pages on this Excel spreadsheet. The first page is things that we've got tentatively scheduled in the DAC agenda for the next several months, and that'll build as we start placing things. The second one are the parking lot items, the items that you all submit, that the public submits, that we know need to happen. And that's where we're parking those, and you'll see there's some ability to rank it on priority when you'd like to see it. And then the third one is simply, once we have gotten an item completed, we'll have a completed page. And as I had mentioned, our goal or our idea is once we've got the structure agreed to by all of you and us, once we've kind of populated a good amount on the list of stuff that's already known, we're then going to put that on the website and have it be an ongoing updated sheet. So as we move things from the parking lot onto the agenda, or as we move things from the agenda into the completed items, we'll be updating that regularly. And on that same page where that parking lot form is, will be the request to appear form, which I think you all have gotten a copy of as well. So it gives everybody, oh, I really want to see this. They'll have the ability to put that form, and it's a form fillable right there. They just fill it out right there and emails it, and it comes right to our department, and we'll be able to take that information and put it onto the parking lot or wherever it needs to go. So that's one of the ways of having kind of an ongoing work plan interactive. It's not necessarily a step-by-step, here's bulleted points of what we're going to do, but that is something that we'll use as a tool, or I think can be a pretty powerful tool.
That's great. And to either clarify just a little bit if I didn't hear you correctly, because when we look at exactly what is in the current budget, so there are specific things that are identified to be accomplished this year, and we are, after tonight's meeting, we're a third of the way through our fiscal year. So my question is where would we look to see about progress along that and what the expected unfoldment is? It's not about we're going to get in there and watch over you guys' shoulders, but to see, because in the end, we have to be able to make recommendations based on what is the input from the residents. So that's what it means for me. And a whole group of us wrote that, and I'm sorry it was unclear. We called it something that doesn't exist, but I think the definition is more important than the name.
Yeah, and 2 points on that. Again, in December, we're going to bring you our 9 capital improvement project items that are in this current year's budget and give you the status update on that. And then internally, I haven't even talked with many of the staff on this. You and I talked about it briefly, is the idea of developing a regular report that is a status report, whether it's monthly or whether it's quarterly. I think we need to figure out what's in the report, but the general idea is it would be a summary of, Candy's summary would be a summary of what the recreation services kind of bulleted update, but then also an update on the CIP, general updates on where we're at, big numbers of revenues and expenditures up to date, and just have a document that we can provide to you, along with your agenda packet, whether you all want to discuss it in detail at the next meeting, or whether you just ask questions on anything that's not clear. It'll at least give you all an update of where we're at on a rolling basis, so that hopefully most questions are answered, and if not, then those will be the exception.
Great, thank you. Any last questions? All right, let's move on to the next item. So to begin with, we're going to talk about what our duties are on the DAC, and I'd like to take a few minutes to actually refocus on our relationship with the BCC, or the actually governing board, and the ways to support things that are included in and have been around for the last 50 plus years, is things in the state comprehensive land use planning requirements around public involvement, because that is what I have said from the get-go. All of you who've had side conversations with me, it is about how do we enhance public involvement, and because it is by design a required part of all land use throughout Oregon, and it making our state is actually quite unique in that regard. So they have 19 goals. The first goal is public involvement, and it is the opportunity for citizens to be involved in all phases of planning, of the planning process. It requires each city, county, and special district, and NCPRD is a special district, to include citizen involvements to address opportunities for widespread public involvement in all phases of the planning process, effective two-way communication with the public, making technical information easy to understand, feedback mechanisms for policymakers to respond to that public input, adequate financial support for the public involvement efforts. And Oregon requires every city, county to adopt a comprehensive plan, which we do have. And given that 80% of NCPRD is in the unincorporated, and so the comprehensive plan does apply to all parts of NCPRD except the part that's in the city of Milwaukee. So it has been a concern that we need to keep addressing that. And it's funny that the actual spirit of the comprehensive plan was that the basis that was originally generated that made NCPRD happen. It was written long before NCPRD happened, and it was described in there as what was needed. And here we are, we have it after these years. So our current, so that was back in the 70s. So to keep in mind, back when it was originally written, we had less than 200,000 people in all of Clackamas County, and we're now sitting close to 425,000 people. But I want to look ahead because we're 30 years into NCPRD, and there's the next 30 years. Now, who knows, I'll be here to see it all, but I'm planning on it, and we'll find out as that turns out. But the population, according to Portland State, of Clackamas County is expected to be 600,000 people in 2050. So that's a significant, and they won't all be in NCPRD. Of course, NCPRD may not stay the exact same way it is, but it is a significant growth, and most of the growth, a significant amount of the growth is still in the NCPRD area. So with that in mind, we have to understand that population growth is inevitable, at least in the foreseeable future, but the degradation of our communities is not, and losing or preserving our resources will depend on the actions that we take. And that's, for me, where I sit and where I think we are, not in any way saying NCPRD staff is not there, not saying the public's not there, but our role as DAC members is to focus on the bigger picture and how it is impacted and get involvement from the broader population. So I believe that as members of the DAC, we can best serve by focusing on the ways to keep expanding our residents' sense of meaningful participation. Doesn't mean it hasn't been happening, but compared to, and when in our own budget, it says, while we know 54 cents per thousand is insufficient, there has not been reading the tea leaves or the wind or the whatever, there has not been a sense that it would be appropriate to ask for an increase. And so it is in that vein that I'm looking at what can we do to help with that. And that is why, and we'll only refer to, we're not going to read through the summary document that was put together by the task force at the request of the Board of County Commissioners as our governing board, to look at what can we do to expand, particularly in the uninvolved areas of the NCPRD area, which are mostly the unincorporated. I really want to give kudos to Milwaukee. When we look at what we want to accomplish, and then we look at what Milwaukee's doing, we want to do that. So if you guys from Milwaukee don't mind, we'll ask you more about how you did this and how you did that, because it works. You're 22,000 people, plus or minus, and we're talking about a group that's 4 times that size, and yet you really have accomplished a lot more, and we want to figure out how we can get from point A to point B. So the thing I want to point out is, under our current reality, there isn't currently enough money available for NCPRD to fulfill all of its acquisition, improvements, program services, and maintenance needs to fulfill the Parks and Rec needs for our growing population in the face of the shrinking available land. So somehow we have to figure out where we're going to get more money. And it isn't just on our shoulders, but I'm thinking we can be of assistance to that. So for me, one of the key factors for expanding our NCPRD resources is to expand our resident awareness, engagement, and support, particularly in the underengaged portions of the unincorporated, as I mentioned. So based on those of you who don't know, for 25 years, up until I retired, I worked specifically in serving under-resourced communities, and it helped to identify desired outcomes and acknowledge that there's not enough funding to be able to hire all the staff or pay the needed resources to be able to fulfill those. And those current and future needs were sitting there with people seeing that they needed it. So in the model that I worked in, we were all over the United States, actually we were all over the world, and we had communities who were able to outreach, inform, recruit, train, and supervise thousands of caring, engaged, responsible volunteers to participate in generating major shifts in seemingly unmeetable needs in under-resourced communities. The expansion of the awareness and the participation led to brand new resources. These successes rippled out into communities. We and others had repeatedly found the addition of focused community outreach augments existing resources to meet vast challenges. Community participation galvanizes community dedication and creates new opportunities and additional financial resources. When people see the impact of their own participation on successful projects, they bring untapped energy to fulfill projects. In today's environment, it seems to me, if we want to have our voters approve an increase above the 54 cents per thousand, we need to increase resident awareness with effective, robust local outreach, painting a picture of what's possible and getting it across to a large portion of the community can build increased loyalty. And this expanded loyalty can inspire more residents to see the value of investing financially in the NCPRD future. So that's my lead in for what I really like to. I don't have a lot to say. I want us to talk about what is our role. So right off the agenda.
And Chair, you would ask me to remind you we're an hour into the meeting.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
And Ben has had his hand up.
Yes, Ben.
Oh. Hi, Grover. Thanks
Hey, man.
for thanks for
By the
your
way,
comments.
before you speak, I really want to repeat the kudos I heard about your presentation, and I'm looking forward to being able to see it.
Oh,
So if there's a
climate-
way to watch that, could you share that with
Yes,
us? Would be great.
yes, yeah. So on the heels of that, I'm on the ORPA, Oregon Parks and Recreation Association Design and Planning Committee. And we did a presentation last week on climate action and how it relates to park districts from the state level all the way down to, you know, park districts like ourselves. So yeah, thanks for that plug, Grover. I wanted to just say, you know, as a representative from Milwaukee, you know, I feel very fortunate because we have such a great city staff and city council that's very pro parks. And I would hope that, you know, the county, I mean, the county is your version of our city council and city staff. So Paul and his cohorts, you know, when it comes to acquiring property and all that stuff, you know, we have a lot more resources up in Milwaukee because we own our sites. We don't have to we don't borrow from, or we don't use NCPRD funds for any of our site purchases or whatnot. So that's a big difference between Milwaukee and the rest of the district. So I would hope that the county and the Board of County Commissioners really sees that and sees how few parks are in the unincorporated areas, and, you know, give a little shot in the arm and boost us where we can in the district, to kind of increase that equity or decrease that equity gap.
That's great. Thank you for that. And that is one of the reasons that one of my focuses is doing away with the 3 zones, which segregated the funding. You know, while the broader group has been putting in over $100 million, it's gone to maintenance. And until we can get other sources of funds, but part of my strategy here that I'm speaking to is that we can find ways to get more people interested and involved. And with such limited funding, when people are involved and care about it, it's amazing what can come out of it. So thank you for that, Ben. Other questions? Okay. So what is our role as a DAC representative representing constituent views, interests, and desires? So that came up in the bylaws, and here it is again. And my biggest question when I was on the DAB, sitting in the audience and then on the DAB, but our task was to, in fact, take on writing the new bylaws. But where do we get that information? That's my big concern. I think it's one of the biggest tasks that we have. And that's why the outreach. I'll be glad when COVID's gone. I mean, being vaccinated and all those things helps, but it still puts a huge damper on. So hopefully by next summer, we can start having more physical present outreach kinds of things. But given that, there's been some discussion. Is our role to be a representative? And then because we live in a particular area, we're a sample, just like it says right here, a sample member of a sub area. And so whatever we think, that's great, let's do it. Or in fact, are we primarily responsible for actually helping to ferret out, be a listening place to hear what people have to say and what? I know that in my own neck of the woods over here, I've heard from so many people about a topic that we have on the agenda tonight because it mattered to them. And that's really where people's interest comes. I didn't even get started this until we lost the campgrounds because I saw that and that was a travesty. And yet, that's where people got involved because there was something they wanted or were concerned about, and it was already too late, and it was not something you could pull back. So we need to get ahead of it. That's all I want to get to. So I assume everyone had a chance to read the summary, and there won't be a test, but the important part is to understand the possibility of the outreach and being able to reach more of that 80,000 people. So I don't want to go on and on. I'd like to hear some thoughts about how do we fulfill that, or how do you see our role? See, Mike taught me I supposed to wait 5 seconds and nobody speaks. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Ryan. And Luca.
Yeah. So I just want to like clarify, are we having a discussion at this point? Are we just kind of, is it questions about the role, or is it a discussion point, if you don't mind, Grover?
Not a bit. It's on the agenda as a discussion agenda. So,
Okay.
So that is why it's here for discussion from my point of view.
So, so I just have just a quick few comments. The one thing that I think Parks and Recreation seems to miss is being a priority to city county governments. Also recognizing that Parks and Recreation are actually economic drivers. And so we need to find a way as a group to be champions of getting the county to see the value in the economic factors, because really doesn't matter what kind of community you live in, what politics it is, what's a driver typically is economics. So I think as a group, maybe we brainstorm this idea of how do we show the economic value. And there's a lot of work that NRPA has done around economics. And also as a group, I think it's really figuring out how do we market the district, and how do we talk about really its quality of life? Are people moving here because it's affordable, or are people moving here because of the amenities? Those are things I think we need to start to understand. And if people are moving here because it's affordable, how do we start to create those amenities? And what does the funding look like that? The funding question is just going to sit there until we, I think, and this is my opinion, until we address it and we figure out a way to change that, because it is a very low funded district. It's extremely low funded district. We can't do great things without funding, and that also comes from the county commissioners and marketing to support that.
Right.
So there's my thoughts.
Well, thank you for that. And yes, Luca.
So going back to sort of the question of sort of what we are, I think we're a fine balance of both. You know, I mean, as members of our sub area, you know, we obviously have opinions and feelings, because if not, we wouldn't be on the committee to start off with, right? We're all on this screen nodding our heads together because we're passionate about making things better for our community. But at the same time, we're volunteered to be a part of this. So we also have to be a sponge and a voice for those people that have something to say. And, you know, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Candy, I think it was like back in August where I was emailing you saying, hey, so what's our plan of actually communicating back to our people, you know? Because I am very much detached from the past politics and all the hard work that happened to get to today. And one thing that, if anything, that's come sort of strong from our community members over these last few months is, with all due respect for the so much hard work that got us to today, most of them don't really care about that. They want to know what we're doing now and what that means for their future. So I think our big challenge is, how are we communicating to them? You know, they're writing to us, great, we hear you, but it can't stop there. It's how are we going to keep these people updated as to potential developments of their specific topic. You know, and I think that's sort of our balance. And like I said last month, that fall forward process of us learning and getting better every month. And I think that very much comes into who we are as a DAC, and what we believe we are as individuals of our community, but also as members of this committee.
That's great. And you actually reminded me of a part I forgot to say in my part, and that is, I really do want to give kudos to how we got here and all the staff work that got us here, and all the oversight work that got us here way before we all, well, some of you have been here longer than me, but before I suited up and before most of us suited up. So I forgot to say that, and that is important. And thank you for bringing that up, Luke, because the first 30 years, a whole lot has been accomplished. Now let's look ahead. So thank you. Other thoughts, comments? Okay, the only other thing that I want to add to this part of the conversation is it is important to me, and it is mentioned in that document. I'm not going to read or quote it. I don't even have it in front of me, but from memory, I know that that document speaks specifically about two different kind of avenues to pursue to be more like Milwaukee, because Milwaukee has a parks board. And originally in the early 90s, all 5 sub areas had neighborhood parks board or parks committee boards. I don't know, it doesn't matter what we call it now, but each one had its own. And that, whether we jump right into that, I think that's premature. But what I would envision is, I know my closest park that we go to is Stringfield Park. My wife and I go there probably a couple times a week. It's a nice walk from home. We walk up, we walk back, and enjoy the birds and the critters and yada, yada. So I believe there are people who, and I'm also a longtime member of the Friends of the Trolley Trail. That's a group that has people who support it. And I'm really a big fan of nurturing that. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not trying to pin this on or throw this on the shoulders of the staff. My life experience is CPOs were self-generating. My life experience of all my years in community, we self-generated. It wasn't a staff-driven piece, because until we can get a lot more staff, I don't think they have the capacity to do that. So that's the part I want to keep weaving in, and I don't expect an answer now or a solution now, but I want to keep that in our forefront. Okay, any last questions or comments before we move to the next item? Okay, don't see any little hands. The hands are little on the screen, you know. So now it's time to talk about item D, park naming policy. And for me, this really fits with what we've been talking about, resident and organizational input. So the only reason this is on here is the number of people in our community who are active, who have thoughts or input about that. And I want to say up front, it makes no difference to me what it ends up being called. What matters to me is people feel heard, and that input is included in the decision-making process. So we're wide open for comments, but I'm looking at, we don't have, nor have we shared all of the documents, letters, input, endorsements, suggestions, etc. And so my interest is to do 2 things. I'd like to hear from those who are, I see Deborah's hand up in a second, but I'd like to hear from those who are in the audience who would like to address this. But for me, really is like to be able to move it from a discussion item to an action item that we can address in our next meeting or in a soon subsequent meeting. Yes, Deborah.
At some point, I saw that there was at least a proposal for people in the Jennings Lodge area to do a survey about the naming. And I wonder, has that been done? And if so, is there anybody in our audience that can talk to us about that?
So there are, I could wing my answer to it, but I'll let them speak. And I'd like to figure out, can we go to public comment on this topic, or do we have to wait and get everything done and then do public comment? I've been in a lot of meetings where you get to go public comment by agenda item. So I'd like to propose that for this topic.
Yeah, I think it's really, I mean, since the whole reason why we keep bringing this up is because of the need for public input and the feelings that the residents have about the naming. So I think we ought to listen to the public before we, as a committee, have any kind of discussion.
Thank you, Deborah. I want to hear what Mike says, and then we'll figure out where we go next.
Thank you, Chair. I was just, if you would indulge, I could read the very basic beginning process as we've got it in our existing naming policy, just to in case people haven't seen that or remember it, of what process is involved if you want to take up a naming issue.
Well, Having read that backwards and forwards and having you and I already had a conversation that it needs some refinement in its clarity. The gist of it, I love it. The clarity on which avenue and where it fits in, like you and I spoke before, it could use some work. So I don't know that policy per se.
It's the one that we have to go with though, and it's the most recent one promulgated in 2006. And so with lack of anything else, the only really major problem with the existing policy is it talks about the DAB, but the process itself is strong. But it's completely up to you, Chair. I was just bringing it up in case anybody wanted a review of what the process says.
Okay, I'd like to go back. So thank you, and let's hang on to that. I don't have a copy in front of me in the moment, but I've read it many times. I'd like to be able to open up the public comment on this agenda item, not on any old agenda item, but on this one. So do we have, has anybody been watching the chat? I've been busy talking to y'all. Is there anyone in the chat that wants to speak on this topic?
Ann Carruthers had mentioned that she had wanted to speak, as did Karen Bjorklund.
Okay. Well, I think Jan Carruthers, I'm reading it now, that she wants to speak about something different than the naming process. So on the naming process, I do know that's what Karen Bjorklund wants to talk to. So I would like to hear from Karen Bjorklund because she actually would be able to answer Deborah's question more specifically. So any objection from anyone? Okay, I don't know how to do the magic. Can we make it so Karen can speak?
I believe I'm unmuted. Somebody kindly unmuted me already.
Thank you. Hello, Karen.
Thank you. Hi, Karen Bjorklund of Jennings Lodge here. And I originally raised my hand with some additional thoughts beyond those I'd already sent you on the park naming issue. But I do want to address Deborah's question about the survey, because I'm the one who sent you a letter, said there's a group called Friends of Jennings Lodge, and they do surveys. That's a thing they do, and they could do a survey if they were asked. So they haven't done it because they haven't officially been asked to do that. But Deborah, they could do that should you want to do that survey. And in fact, I do know that an issue of, they send out an email every couple of weeks, and there will be one, I think, coming out next Thursday, so a week from Thursday, which would be an opportune time to do something. So you could discuss that and let me know. I can transfer that back. But the thing that I actually came on to talk to you about was some additional thoughts about the process. The new district advisory committee, it's a rebirth. It's not based on the same old. Instead, I think it's Grover Jeffrey was talking about, it was built with a lot of community involvement based on the principles of representation and public involvement. And that's what your constituents, the people like me, who voted for you to represent them, are expecting of the DAC and the staff as you move forward with your work, that you reach out and find out what we want and try to make that happen within the parameters that you have to work with. And that includes the issue of the naming of the wetlands in Jennings Lodge. And as you work out in general how you will operate as a committee and how you will do outreach, which one of your members talked about, it occurs to me that the Jennings Lodge park name issue would make a really good pilot project to use in developing how the DAC and the staff is going to operate. And a couple reasons why that would make a good pilot. Number one, the impact area is not the whole district. Jennings Lodge is roughly 1,800 households. So the main impact size might be easier to work with as a pilot project for how you might do things in the future. And the second reason is that this property was not donated to the NCPRD by a private owner. Instead, it was donated by a public entity with ratepayers, and those ratepayers provided the money that supported this project. And those ratepayers include those Jennings Lodge households I just mentioned. So if there was ever a time for a community members to weigh in on a park name, this is probably it. And I can imagine that, because I can put myself in the place of the NCPRD staff who would really like there to be a name to put on that sign at the park. You know, there's kind of a pressure there. But I want to note that the NCPRD staff has done a really good job on the website of describing the park, that it's wetlands, Boardman, Rainerson wetlands. And I haven't heard any community members pushing to change that until the name issues are worked out. So I think the staff has done an excellent job of trying to describe on the website what that is. But there is a way I can think of, and you can probably think of others, but there's a way to have a sign and still be working on the name. And that might be to have a blank sign at the park with a banner. I can picture this in my mind. Banner across the sign that reads, "Please help name this park." And it has a QR code on it, a quick response code that people could scan with their phones, which takes them to a name survey that they could fill out on the spot. Now, if it turns out that's something you're interested in, another county department that I was working with had a pilot project, they had a sign, they had a QR code that led to meeting information in a survey, so I could provide that information to staff if they need it. And that's what I've got for you at the moment. And I do appreciate your time, and I can take back anything you want me to take back to the Friends of Jennings Lodge on a survey or anything else. Thanks.
Karen,
Yes.
I just said thank you.
Okay.
And Chair,
Okay.
it does look like Jan Carruthers would also like to speak.
Okay, great. I yield to, I don't see her where her name appears, so I can see it, but if you guys can do that, there she is.
Thank you. Oops, I'm still muted.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh,
We can
okay,
hear
great.
you.
Thank you. I appreciated all the things Karen said because they're creative and they're wonderful. I just want to speak to the fact that there are many people in our community who feel we already have done a lot of that, and so that would go some far to reinforce the idea that NCPRD and the county is serious about assuring community involvement, because the CPO voted on it. We took it to the water district and they agreed to a name that included wetlands. And so then it went into the ozone. I understand that. I understand all those pieces. However, this would be a time that you have a chance to educate the public that says you're serious about what they say. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Jan. Any other in the audience hands up? Otherwise, is there any from the DAC that would like to speak? I do have a question what our options are. Can we move this to the next meeting and actually have it be an action item with things that have to be accomplished between then and now? Because when I read the policy, it specifically says it is the policy of NCPRD to provide opportunities for public input related to the naming of a park and facilities. It shall be the responsibility of the DAB to initiate a process to name a park and a facility and for the recommendations to the board of directors for consideration and final decision. So it really points to listening to the public. So what are our options as far as being able to move that forward?
You can either take it up as an action item tonight with a motion and postpone the discussion until next month. You can request that we just add this as an action item to next month's meeting, where you would just open it up as an action item and get a motion in a second, and then open your discussion. Those are the two main ones, really. You can do it tonight. I wouldn't recommend it. Usually you want to have an action item that's been noticed and, all of that. But we would certainly be able to put it onto next month's agenda as an action item.
Okay, so those are our options. Let's hear from folks. Yes, Ben.
I'm curious what this is like. We've brought this up several times, voted on it a couple times, but it keeps coming back
No,
up.
wait a minute. You just said we voted on it. I please identify
No.
when we voted on it several times.
We voted on the naming of the park.
When?
And we also voted on bringing up the renaming of the park again. And now the process is coming up again.
Okay, good.
I'm just stating facts, Grover, here.
I said, okay, good.
I totally appreciate open transparency and public process.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right.
Okay.
And not based on a few people that really want to die on this hill. Because I feel like I don't really know how much community engagement has been done around this. I don't really know the process. I don't know how many people were reached out to. I would like to know before, because we're spending a whole lot of time on this. We've got serious issues in this district, and we're like spending a whole lot of time over whether we put in wetlands in this park name or not. And I just don't, it's just a lot of time to spend. And if we're going to do it, we got to do it right. And I would like to know how to do it right. And if people are on board to do it right, and what does that look like?
Mhm. Well, thank you for that. Yes, Joel.
I guess kind of on the heels of what Ben just said. I'm certainly not as passionate about this as what appears. There's several people that are, but I'm a little confused as to where we are with this right now. What is the status of this park's name in the eyes of the county or NCPRD, or has any name been approved by the BCC yet? Is this just in limbo, floating around NCPRD? We've seemed to talk ourselves in circles about this issue, and I guess I'm a little confused at the current status of this, and what that status is, and then how do we move forward from that status? Can someone clarify that for me?
I can't.
I can try and tackle it. I gave a report when I was here for, I think, 2 weeks when I had first started, that according to our legal counsel, the action that was taken to name the park previously was a legal action. I'm not saying that we did all the full vetting of public input, but the action that was taken by the previous body, the DAB, was appropriate action. Since there is new information that has come in since then, it is also appropriate for the body, if you feel that it is appropriate, to bring that process back up. And what I recommend is that we follow the actual policy points and steps, because it's very clear on how a park naming is supposed to happen. And it can either be brought up by the DAC as a body, or the DAC could decide to set up a subcommittee, and both of those actions are covered in the naming policy. Is the policy perfect? I can't speak to how perfect it is, but it is what has last been promulgated back in 2006 and what was referenced in the actions in 2019. So it's not inappropriate for the body, if they so choose, to bring up the naming as a new item with new information. The very first step of the process after it's decided if it's going to be either a subcommittee or the body itself taking it up is to invite the submission of nominations from residents of the district, or create an ad hoc committee that shall invite the submission of nominations from residents of the district. Such nomination shall include the reasons for name submission and the justification for the name. And then there's, 4, 5, 6 other, 8 other steps that lead you through the timeline process of what would happen to consider the naming.
Can I follow up real quick then, Grover, if you don't mind? So in light of, and thank you, Michael, that's exactly, I guess what I was getting at. So the way I understand this though, going back to the first part of your comments is, legally speaking, the name as it stands has been approved. So we are discussing whether to bring this up as a renaming almost. It sounds like this would be a new action item or discussion item to rename the park. I mean, it may be the shortest lived named park in the district, but currently it's named in the eyes of NCPRD. So wouldn't this be a rename?
I left out the part unofficially, yes, but after the action of the DAB, it was never brought before the BCC or the NCPRD board for final approval.
So it's still a live
It's still in
item.
limbo.
It's just, okay, that was the clarification. I appreciate that. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk you in circles either. It was, it's
And I
all
should
gotten
have-
very confusing. So it's not something we have to rename again. This is something we could potentially reopen then.
Correct.
We just start, okay, thank you.
Yes, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Grover. Just a few thoughts in hearing what's going on. And I just want to provide some perspective for the group is maybe this is a subcommittee for people that are really passionate about this project. And then I also just want to make sure that we're, as a public employee myself, I always want to make sure that we're being really cognizant about using our resources, fully using our resources, and not having our resources go somewhere that maybe they could go other places that are more needed. So I think maybe my thought is a subcommittee could think about this, discuss it, and come back to the board, talk to Michael, do a little work on the side, and let's save some of the resources that are going into it from the staff to do some other work. So thank you.
Thank you. Maureen.
Hi, thank you. So at this time, my understanding is there is only one suggested name, including the wetlands. So it's Jennings Lodge Nature Park Wetlands at Boardman, or some facsimile of that. I'm sorry, can you, or are there more submissions than that? Okay, okay.
Yeah,
So
there's a
more than
whole,
just that dilemma.
sorry, Maureen, but there's a whole litany of inputs that have come that have not been put to this board at all. And it was on short notice that it was put on the agenda in the first place. So that happened. It went through that process, but a significant amount of, and here's for the part that's most important to me. People were not informed using the Oak Lodge Water Services. They are wonderful people. We love them, but they have a liaison to the community planning organization in Jennings Lodge. And they did not alert Jennings Lodge that that was going to be coming up and that they were going to be deciding the name. So no one was there when they did that. So then a committee went and spoke to them after the CPO met, just a couple nights after that meeting, not a couple of, shortly after, same month. And in that process, it was clear to them and they resubmitted another name. And then there's probably 10 or more inputs where people have written in with long, well thought out, but it is about, are we going to listen to the constituents or are we going to check a box? Because in a former way of doing things, well, it was on the agenda, nobody spoke, done.
Well,
we did our public outreach and
just
that's not what I want to support.
Right. What I've learned tonight is because there wasn't a final board of directors vote and that it was a sealed deal. I think if we want to spend some time on it, I would love to start that motion and bring it to some kind of final conclusion that everybody's happy with a little thought. After all, the sign is only going to hold so many words. So I just, okay, that's all I have to say, so I can move along for the next person's question. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Yes, Mike had something?
I just wanted to read for anybody not familiar, the makeup of the subcommittee is defined by the policy also. And it says membership of the ad hoc committee shall include at least one DAB or DAC member, the NCPRD director or a designee, one member of the appropriate city council if it's within a municipality, or one citizen at large and one member of the appropriate community planning organization or neighborhood association. And so the subcommittee would just be one member of the DAC along with these other folks that would be identified, just for full context.
Great. So, and that's not actually a subcommittee, that's a, what'd you call it? Because it's whatever it is, ad hoc committee or that group. So does that fit with what, oh, yes, we haven't got anything seconded. Yes, Ben.
I'm curious, the subcommittee is going to come back to us and make a name recognition, or is the subcommittee going to suggest a process? That's my first question. Second question is, are we going to involve the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, whose land that this was once on? Because if we're going to do it right, that's how we do it right.
All right. We actually have some people looking into that to see if they have any interest in that. So it's true. That could include that. And I want to keep in mind then, based on your statement, Ben, that every naming of every park in the future would then in fact require that so it's a precedent that we'll set that anytime we name anything, including, by the way, did we include anyone from the Grand Ronde to rename the Milwaukee Community Center? I don't think so. So when do we start being consistent? So we're going to draw a line and go forward. I'm fine with that, but we need to have it be a line that we've drawn and we're consistent hereafter.
No, that's a good point. I think that is a good point. We should talk about that.
Okay. You want to open the floor for discussion about that, or how do you want to do that?
Well, I think that would look at actually just having the actual renaming process as an agenda item completely. Or not renaming, naming for that matter. Yeah.
Okay, as a action item, agenda item?
Yes.
Okay. And to get from here to there, do we follow what Mike read from the initiating a ad hoc committee, including as described, so we could appoint that, and you're suggesting that we should extend the offer to someone from the Grand Ronde. We actually have some people checking on what is the specific tribe that was here. Grand Ronde is a confederate of many tribes, but we have people who are checking on that.
When you say we, who do you mean? NCPRD?
People in our CPO, for one, who were very interested in and actually do a significant amount of volunteering at that very facility, and cares a lot about wetlands and the like. So they're looking into, is there a connection to a specific tribe? Because, I mean, as we know, many wetlands, it was a place that collected certain seasonal resources, et cetera. So I'm willing to go with this as long as we want. It's 8:10. Did you have something specific you wanted to recommend as far as how to do your recommendation, Ben?
I would ask NCPRD their relationships with the Confederated Tribes, because that's, I think, going to be pretty important in this process if we're going to really go down this road, which I see some not. Oh, I see a lot more hands up. Maybe I should stop talking.
Okay. Deborah.
Well, what I sort of, I'm interpreting Ben, and Ben can tell me if I'm doing this correctly, is that the action item ought to be a revision of the naming process, period.
Right, and if I understand, your significant point there was to include the First People or Native population that is most relevant, if applicable. Is that
Well, I think that's that would be determined if we're going to redo the naming process, period. Then we can say, do we want to include whatever native population was here? I mean, that
Okay.
we might very well do that. But I thought Ben was saying something about we just simply ought to look at the naming process, period, as opposed to using one that's maybe very old and maybe not one cumbersome and one we don't want to use.
That's a good point. Although actually to be able to use a new one, it would have to go through the whole process of being approved before we could use it, I think. So, but it's a good point. Anything
Well,
else?
the only way, I mean, all we'd have to do would be to discuss it and vote on it, wouldn't it?
Can I get some guidance from who would know how a policy is changed? Because this was approved by the district board in 2006, and then it was approved by the board of county commissioners. It was in March and then in April. So it sounds like if we approved a new policy and if they concurred, it could be within a month after our doing it, or after some period after ours. So yes, could be that way. Thank you. Joel.
I'll be really brief, and maybe Mike will be able to clarify. I feel like we're getting way off track here. We're talking about two completely separate things that are related in the sense of how we handle them. We're talking about revamping the naming policy and then the name specifically that's been assigned under the current policy, which, as Michael has pointed out, is the only policy we can operate under. So I think to move, in the interest of moving forward, maybe we can rein this in and treat these as two separate issues and move on.
Thank you for that. Yes, Mike.
I was just going to answer Ben's question specifically about reaching out to the First Nations. We are making those relationship connections right now with in a couple of other mechanisms, and it's certainly part of the conversation that we can engage with for not just this, but really including them in all of our public comment opportunities that we've got, whether it's park project planning or park naming. Part of the vagueness of the policy, it doesn't say you can't contact anybody. It says that appropriate efforts should be made to reach out to constituents. And I think that's probably an area where we haven't as much, and is definitively on my radar to include in all possibilities, as are our Spanish speaking populations and our other populations that speak other languages. We're trying to figure out the ways to reach out and be inclusive to all, not just specific neighborhood groups.
Thank you. So again, I appreciate separating the two. And if I heard what you said, it sounds like we could include on this particular example, the First Nation folks, and yet not have to change the policy. We can consult them as opposed to changing the policy, and that becomes a separate issue. So that moves that forward. And then in the process, it does say, if appropriate, the DAB may initiate a process to recommend a park or facility name by inviting the submission of nominations from residents of the district, or by creating an ad hoc committee. So it's an either or there that shall invite submissions. But then the second one was membership of the ad hoc committee shall be. So it doesn't necessarily say it has to be an ad hoc committee. Yes, sir.
Just doing an additional time check as requested. We have 15 minutes left for our scheduled meeting.
Okay. Well, I'd like to get out of where we are, but there seemed to be a lot of concern about moving forward and putting on the agenda. And if I remember, Maureen actually made a motion to, and do you remember what your motion was, Maureen, so we could pick up from there?
Well, I heard what Michael said, what the bylaws are for the ad hoc committee. And I heard what you said about throwing it out there for the general public to make submissions. And I'll do either thing, but I think these people have had a long time to think about what they want to name that. And again, I can't imagine that there would be more than a few appropriate submissions for us to consider. So, you know, in the spirit of resolving this, letting the public know that we are listening to them, how can we make it so at the next meeting, we've moved forward, made some kind of progress with it, whether it's inviting the public to finalize their submissions or creating the committee, but I vote that we make that decision now.
Right, and it is an either or. It can either be, we can initiate a process to recommend a park facility name by inviting submissions, or we could do an ad hoc committee. They're both in the same clause of the policy.
Right, and like I said, I think a lot of the citizens that are involved in this particular renaming has had a lot of time to think about what they want it to be. So again, until someone says, oh my God, there's 25 submissions, I can only hardly imagine there could be maybe 2.
Okay. So what I was taking from Karen's recommendation is that there is an opportunity to do a polling, which would come up with some name recommendations. I'm either way, whether we go ahead with the ad hoc committee or we go straight for, we have a source. It is local here, and it's open to anybody who would want to. And I don't know what an ad hoc committee would do for further outreach. That's the part that's unknown to me.
Nor do I. I mean, it sounds like it would be a real hands-on thing. We had a neighborhood coalition that, due to just a lot of apathy and uninvolvement, dissolved. And so I don't know if I could even find a neighbor that might submit any kind of anything of interest in my neighborhood, but it seems like the Jennings Lodge area is very committed to this, and it's brought up several times, and I'm just trying to find a way to get it moved along as well.
Great. And just for its worth, the CPO meeting that was immediately following the DAB meeting where it was decided, which was the first chance they had to address it, there were close to 30 people who engaged in the process and voted, et cetera. I don't have the exact number, but it was a good turnout and a lot of lively discussion, which I got to listen to. So how do we decide? I'm in favor of given the offer from the Jennings Lodge, Friends of Jennings Lodge, to actually ask people to use that poll on the one hand, but also could submit directly, which leads me to another question, Mike. Do we know who, when it goes to DAC, are you going to give us that DAC at NCPRD? Are you going to address that later, or?
If Jessica is on, Jessica, you and I hadn't had a chance to connect on this. When something is sent to the DAC email list, other than DAC members, who else receives those emails?
Goes to you, me, and Candy as well. And I can add anyone else on there that needs to be added as well.
So DAC and Commissioner Savas, is he in on those?
Yes.
So
Yes,
Commissioner Savas, the DAC members, Candy, myself, and Jessica. That's the distribution for when emails come into DAC.
Great, thank you for that. So people can, go ahead.
Question. This is for, I guess, Jessica. When you talk about distribution for the emails that come to us, I can't, or can I directly access them? Or are you the one that accesses them and then sends them on?
They should go directly to your email. Everyone on the DAC provided an email with their application when they applied, and it should go to that. If you're not getting it, let me know, and maybe if you have a different email you wanted on there, I can put whatever your preference is for email on there.
Okay. Okay, so I've just gotten a couple of things, but they are going directly to me, my regular email address.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. So your motion was, Maureen?
There's no active motion at this point.
She's in the process of making one. Did I misunderstand you, Maureen?
No, not at all. The fervor surrounding this issue warrants us to address it, come to a conclusion and move along. So if having the general consensus from the citizens submitted in a way that is appropriate for the county, and then us having a final say on the submission, and then it's up to someone else to finalize that again. So what would it take to get a list of named submissions from the citizens of that area that they want that park to be called? I mean, again, how many names are going to be submitted, and what kind of time frame do we need to give the citizens to pull that information and make it available to us?
My understanding, to answer your direct question, is that the Friends of Jennings Lodge could get something out in the next few days, and it would then come back to them and they would be able to compile that. In addition, through other means, we could get it out to folks and they could send directly to the DAC at ncprd.com. The only question I have is, will we do any compiling on that? Because so far, a number of communications have come in or gone to NCPRD so that people can see the full array, and then we could do some sort of compiling. But I do think the Friends of Jennings Lodge people are very willing to be helpful in that. I've worked with them for a lot in the past. So if that's your recommendation, you get to choose. So that's an initiating a process to recommend a park or facility name by inviting submission from residents of the district.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We had a third even. I like it. Okay. So any discussion? Further discussion?
And we need to know what the actual motion is. We didn't hear an I move to. So Jessica needs that language for her. So what is the actual motion?
Well, I'd like to help Maureen because it is the words directly out of the policy. So the DAB will initiate a process to recommend a park or facility naming by inviting submission of nominations from residents of the district.
Exactly. And I submit that as our agenda and our request, yes.
Item 1 of the process, first half. Okay, good. Any other discussion? Okay. Oh, I see your hands up, Dave.
Yeah, so just to make sure, just make clear, we've already invited submissions. So I'm not sure what we accomplished with that. We've already got a bunch of them. I guess I thought we were going to have the this Friends of Jennings Lodge do a survey and take a poll and tell us how many people wanted each name, and then we ended up with just one name, and then we could accept that or not. So where are we doing something different from that?
I don't know that we're doing something different than that. I actually think, I don't know that we've done that. And I don't know that all of the submissions that have been made have ever been assembled for the DAC to have them filtered down to a few or have every one. But there are not hundreds and hundreds of variations. There's only a few. And if we could rank them by the most people said this and the most people said that second and third, and then we would have a few choices for us to discuss whatever the results was. Did that answer your question, Dave?
Yeah, that's where we're trying to get to, where we have I guess you would say a ranking, so we can make a decision on it.
Right. I do believe that will be possible by the Friends of Jennings Lodge, and everyone can input, because it does say recommendations from residents of the district. So I don't know how many people over in your area are going to weigh in, but you're certainly welcome to, Dave.
Well, most people are, I've never heard of whatever the name of this place is going to be.
Correct.
So,
Okay, good. Yes, Mike.
Just another time check, 5 minutes until the scheduled end of the meeting.
I got it. So you want to, any more questions? We can poll the group.
Jessica, would you call the question?
Call the roll.
Monica,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
David,
yes,
Deborah,
Yes.
Desi,
Can I abstain?
Okay.
Jan,
Yes.
Joel,
Yes. Okay.
Luca,
I don't see him.
He just sent me a message. He lost internet. So he's out right now.
Okay.
Maureen,
Yes.
Ryan,
Abstain.
and Grover.
Yes. Okay. I don't know the numbers, but it clear was enough to pass. So I assume Karen Bjorklund's still on. I'll follow up with her as well. And does anyone else who needs to follow up in specific? Hearing none. Next item. Are there people in the public comment that say they want to speak about other topics on our agenda? Or did we cover the public comment?
Nobody's made any comments on here that they wanted to speak about something else.
Okay, if they should speak up, we'll pay attention to that, but other than that, we'll move on. DAC member reports.
We've skipped over current active project update. We can for time if you want. That's up to you.
No, I actually think, thank you. It's all bunched together and I can't see through my glasses right now, but yes, please do that. Please do give us a current activity project update.
So the two active projects right now, plus a third one, I'll run through them quickly. First, Concord is still we're still in the process of working with our CMGC and OPSIS on getting more accurate estimates. Currently, we still plan to have alternatives that we'll be presenting to the board in early to mid-November. I already talked about the systems plan. The amount of money that we've got is going to be the big limiter on the scope of what we're able to get done, but we are scoping that out right now. And then the only other active project report that I was going to give was on the Milwaukee Bay Park project, just to let everybody know that we do have a tentative agreement between the city of Milwaukee and NCPRD on the intergovernmental agreement for the construction and funding of that. The general timeline that we're looking at is it's going to be presented to the city of Milwaukee for them to hopefully approve. Then it'll go to the NCPRD board. And depending on when that is, we'll bring back an after action to you all either in November or December, depending on when timing comes out on when things are finally approved. But the only other step in this that we're still working on is this 2-ink contract with our design firm, which we hope to also be able to move forward and begin the vetting phase where we can get some more realistic current prices. But the project is moving forward. That is what I've got for ongoing things. I can cover the rest briefly now, or if you want, I can do it in director reports.
Or you can do it, director report. Yes, I think that'd be great. And we'll talk again on Monday, you and I and others. Okay. Anything else on that? Now we'll do.
Anita's got her hand up.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just wondered if you could give us an update on Jennings Lodge School project. A really brief one.
Jennings Lodge School project. Candy, I don't believe we've got really any update on that at this point.
Okay.
And there is no update. We haven't started any kind of planning project or on that site at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that raises a question for me, and that sort of fits with some of the previous questions. Do we, since it is one of the, in this year's planning, and we're now a third of the way into the year, is there some plan on how it's going to unfold? Using that one as an example.
Again, if it's in the current year's CIP project, that's the report that we're going to be bringing to you on status updates in December.
Okay, so because it's there, we'll hear about it at the December meeting. Is that what you're saying?
Candy's got her hand raised. I can't speak right now whether that's actually on our list of 9 projects.
It is one of our projects, but we are in the process of actively trying to recruit for our vacant positions that are also in this budget. So part of our challenges is staffing, and specifically in that department. And so we do have recruitments that should be coming through to help us. So we are able to start looking at some of those projects as well.
Thank you, Candy.
So that does it on current activity and project updates and questions. So next is DAC member reports. Yes, Joel.
I know we're running long on time. I'll be as quick as I can, but I do want to let everyone know that the Clackamas County Advisory Board to the Milwaukee Community Center is seeking 2 additional board members. If you or anyone in your areas or your fields of influence are interested, we really encourage them to apply or join us for a meeting. We meet the second Friday of every month at 9:30. And anyone in the district is eligible to attend and or participate. So please spread the word for us.
Okay, thank you. Anita.
Yeah, I was going to mention a number of things, but I think I'll just say that I went to the Milwaukee Parks and Rec Board meeting to see how a Parks Board operates, and also set the stage for us to visit each other's park boards in the different sub areas once the park boards get set up in each sub area. And also, I had a fun visit with Ryan Ben. We went around and looked at 2 different potential park areas, and I also met with Deborah at a different time. I hope to do that with everybody at some point.
Thank you. Any other DAC member reports? I think we've covered enough, and I will pass on my part. So, director's report.
I just have a couple of things that I wanted to cover tonight. The first is congratulations to our entire finance division. We just got notified that the Government Finance Officers Association has given us their finance award for our annual financial report with the fiscal year ending June 30 of 2020. It's basically one of the highest honors that GFOA can give out, saying that we are definitively leading the way on how we present and manage our budget. So kudos to all of our finance staff. It's a pretty major award to be able to get recognition from them. Let's see, the only other things were the request to appear forms. We sent those out. If anybody has any feedback or comment, please let us know. Otherwise, we'd like to start using those as soon as possible. And with that, I mentioned also the parking lot. We will be sending out to you all, hopefully by middle of next week, the draft structure of it with a few things filled in, some of them things that Anita has sent us. So you'll see we've used you as a way to kind of start filling those parking lot items in to see how it works. So please don't worry too much about the content at this point, because we know we have a lot of things to add to it. We're really looking for the structure. Are there columns that you want to see added, or are things not clear, things like that? So Other than that, everything else can wait. So I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you. All right. Next item, future dates. Next DAC meeting is Wednesday, November 10th.
And that
And-
chair may wind up being requested to change. We haven't made any determination yet. I wanted to put it out there for the group because the Concord project is being discussed by board members in early November. The earliest that we would be able to get you potentially information after that would be not until the December meeting. So that one of the thoughts was possibly moving from November 10th to November 17th, which would give an additional week. It's not necessary, and we don't know where things are going to time out yet on this. But I did want to put it out if anybody has major objections where we know we wouldn't have quorum or anything for that November 17th. If you could let Jessica know. We don't have anything finalized yet, but it is in an effort to get you information sooner rather than later on what direction is being looked at as potential paths to move forward for the Concord project.
So was that a request that everyone say that whether this, if they could slide to the 17th if needed? Is that what I heard you say?
Or you can let Jessica know if you wouldn't be able to, or would just via email.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yay or nay? Got it. Thank you. So the tentative November agenda items are listed as being eliminating the zones, public meeting law overview, DAC additional work sessions and subcommittees. And we also have the meeting that's going to take place on October 18th, which is Monday. And if people have other submissions they'd like to put into that, Jessica needs them by 7 a.m. on Monday. Any comments, questions? Well, I'd say 7 minutes over, given all the stuff we covered, was remarkable. And thank you all for participating. And till next time, thank you. We're adjourned.